Today on the Disruptive Voices of the Pacific, we're going to be having a conversation around a topic that we don't always talk about, especially public like this. That topic is marital rape. And the reason why I want to address this on our podcast is simply because of your questions. Over the years, I've had quite a few Fijian women message me, asking me, particularly as a pastor, telling me that their husbands are wanting to have sex and do this and that, and then they're using scriptures to quote that, you know, this is what a woman must do and she must submit to whatever he wants. So look, I've heard a lot of these discussions and it's concerned me. And so we're going to have a bit more of a discussion. And my guest today to help me unpack this topic is Sassy, and she's no stranger to Fiji. She's the founder of Lewa Strong. She's lived in Fiji for many years, so it's just great to have you with us today, Sassy. Welcome.
Thanks, Letitia. Nice to be here today. Thank you.
Yeah, so maybe I know you're a well-known face and name in Fiji, but for those who don't know you, can you maybe give us a bit of your context and background and involvement in Fiji?
Sure. Pinaka, Bulinaka, Nedango Sesi, Ndolangsere. Most of you would know me as a singer. And I've had many years in the music industry in Fiji and the Pacific Islands. I hail from Auckland, however, born and bred in Auckland, New Zealand. And my children, I have 4 children. They 3 of them hail from Nomosi, Saliandrao, Irakisara, right up in the highlands. And the other, my little boy, Jaira, he is from Vanulevu, so Mbua and Taviuni. And we've lived on Taviuni, really, really enjoyed. I love Vanulevu and I really enjoyed living that sort of off-grid lifestyle for a while. But then what happened is that my music started to take off and we needed to be back in Suva. So I had lived in Suva. I taught at international school for 3 years, and I'd lived in Pacific Harbour. I'd lived around different places in Viti Level, but that little slice of island life, I'll never forget it. And from then, we came back to Suva. The music sort of took off on its own and had a really amazing journey. As I said, in the industry, I've been a judge at the FIPRA Music Awards, on the Vocal Battle TV show, various other things I've been involved in, projects, fundraisers, the Fringe Festival. And I'm currently in New Zealand with still got a lot of strings and ties into Fiji with Lewa Strong, which is a violence prevention movement and fashion label.
Yeah. And I think that's how I first came across you, was your shirts beat your issues, not your lewa. And I was like, I love this, and kind of did a bit of research and then found the woman behind it. So what is the heart behind Lewa Strong and why did you start that?
Lewa Strong started as back in 2018, it was like a bit of a hashtag, you know. I just started using that term, Lewa Strong, which became a really well-recognized brand because people, I think, really resonated with what it meant. And those of us that don't, anyone that's listening that doesn't understand Fijian and hasn't lived there, contextually, that just, Lewa obviously means girl or woman. We know that. So yeah, people do ask me, so what does that mean? So yeah, if you're not from Fiji, that's what it means. Lewa means girl or woman. Strong, obviously, so we're empowering our women, and that's how it started. Excuse me, it started because I had survived partner violence myself, and in the context of Fiji and in a relationship in Fiji. And I really felt like it was time to speak up and use my platform to not just educate, but to really take a stance and do something about it. And my biggest thing is impact rather than just lip service, you know. So it did start as like a trending kind of hashtag. And my goal was to try and get our men on board. And over the years, it's taken different shapes. So I guess I've spoken a lot about intimate partner violence, gender-based violence, my own experience or other women's experiences. A lot of women write to me. I'm sure you experience the same thing. And then over time, I thought, well, this is specifically about our Fijian Lewas. that's where it started. That's the root of it all. And I really want to have some representation around that and let our women feel seen. So I commissioned an artist to design the lawas. And anyone that knows about the t-shirts, we have 4 lawa designs. One is an Itoke woman with a buninga, the afro. And we have this one here. She's like a part European, woman. So we call her a senitoa. And then we have an Indian woman from Fiji. And then we have a part Chinese woman as well, because I wanted to show the ethnicities that people may not even be aware, exist in Fiji. And then for the Lawas to say, hey, that looks like me. That's a bit of me. So, just really feeling they could identify with Lawa Strong, which is all about, as you said, beat your issues, not your Lawa, getting to the root cause of the problem. Because as we know, it's not about stopping violence, and it's not just stopping violence, it's about what's causing the violence, what's causing the anger. And that's really my goal in life, is to break the cycle, change mentalities around that stuff in the Pacific context. And I've broadened it, its home is in Fiji, but I've broadened it to Pacific cultures, and also to have some real impact. Yeah. And to change and to create safety for women who I feel are not safe at all a lot of the time when it comes to domestic violence.
Yeah, wow. Well, thank you. Again, your work is just so vital because you've lived the experience, you know exactly what you're talking about, and you're doing something. So thank you. So let's move on to this issue of marital rape. Can you explain to us what exactly is it, and why is it important that we name it for what it is?
Yeah, I think one of the first issues we have, one of the biggest issues, is recognizing what gender-based violence or partner violence actually is. And I think there's this sort of general perspective that it's getting a hiding. It's the physical form of violence, which is, being beaten. There's all these expressions like, being called a wife beater, that sort of thing. But there's so much more to it. And unwrapping that, peeling back the layers of that is really important. So as you said, putting a name to it. I mean, rape doesn't stop when you get married. It's no longer rape. And it is a form of violence, partner violence. So that's the first thing I think we need to address, is you can't slap a Band-Aid over it and say, oh, well, she's my wife, so it's not rape. And women as well, us women need to actually acknowledge and feel okay about saying it out loud. Oh, this is rape. This isn't something I'm required always to do, and I just have to tolerate all the time. That's not what it's about. So marital rape is when a partner forces or coerces their partner. Generally, it's a husband forcing a wife into sexual acts without their consent. So without the consent is the part we want to hold on to. Yeah, obviously consent, it means that you are willingly engaging. Yeah. And it is a form of violence. It's very common in our Pacific cultures that women or young girls from a young age were raised to believe that sex is a duty in marriage. And especially, as you've mentioned, that sort of slap a Bible verse on it, and it becomes more applicable, that, oh, well, in the Bible, it says da 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 da, so you have to. But what we all need to understand is that marriage doesn't give somebody license to or ownership to someone else's body, and to have that body whenever they want. So I think naming it's really, really important, because it breaks the silence. And if we don't name it, then we can't heal from it or hold people accountable.
Yep. I think there's been this underlying lie too as Christian women, that if we don't give him sex whenever he wants, that he'll go and cheat on us and it'll be our fault. And
definitely have been through that.
That's never a guilt that a woman should live with. I was actually with a Fijian pastor earlier this year where we were talking about rape, and he humbly admitted to me that, he had probably there'd been times where he just kept nagging his wife to have sex, nagging, and he admitted that that was something wrong after listening to one of my talks, that even just nagging them down, it shouldn't be something that you've got to nag away at
Mm.
in a relationship. But it's just some of those attitudes, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think if you're having to nag your partner for sex, you might need to look at how you're treating sex within the confines of marriage. Like it's a service rather than it's two people coming together and expressing love and being, equally yoked, and then all of the things that we believe as Christians as well. But God certainly didn't design sex to be violent, abusive, and without consent. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So why is it that you feel, why do you think that so many women in the Pacific and Fiji feel unable to speak about sexual abuse within marriage?
I mean, the word that pops up is shame, hugely. I think we all would relate to that, um, sometimes you feel like a failure of a wife, even if this kind of thing is raising its head in your marriage. So the fear of being talked about, the fear of your husband cheating, absolutely. There's always this term thrown around, the culture of silence. And I don't really love it, but I think it kind of can explain a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes. Is that, well, first of all, we're talking about a non-confrontational culture. So raising these issues isn't typically done, and speaking them out loud almost, yes, it's almost admitting failure, or something's wrong with you, something's wrong with your marriage, you don't want to look like that. But also being blamed, women often get the blame for things in a marriage that goes wrong. And yeah, I think also maybe that label of being disrespectful and not obeying your husband, all of those kind of things come into play. And I certainly relate to a lot of that. So it's a very tricky one, because as much as it's tempting to sort of put the blame all on men, it's actually not always the men that are doing this. Men certainly are often perpetrators of marital rape, but I don't think that all of that stigma is necessarily all coming from men. Yeah. And this is just a view that I have that I guess has been shaped by living in an immersive way in the culture. And I don't mean to offend anyone, so I really hope that I can treat this delicately enough that it's taken as just a view, just something to do with my own experience. But often what's happening is that women are almost becoming numb inside, not feeling they had any space at all being held for them to voice these kind of things, which is why a platform like yours or mine are really valid and really important. But there's also that thing where you kind of look around and compare yourself with others, and if no one's speaking up, you would think that you're the abnormal one. And so that's the danger. That is the risk, is that if we don't speak up, and if you don't speak up and I don't speak up and my neighbour doesn't speak up and my auntie and my sister and my cousin, and if no one speaks up, nobody knows anyone else is going through it. And it's just like a seething kind of like an infection. It will just get bigger, worse, and more toxic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember a Fijian woman, beautiful woman, just saying to me, I never understood that sex was for women as well. Again, just thinking she had to do her wifely duties. And I mean, what a lie. And just something that could be fixed so easily from, in our churches, declaring that God's created sex for men and women's pleasure, not just for one. So some of these lies that these poor women live with for years, and it's the same in our culture here in New Zealand and Australia, just lies that continue to go on. What are some other myths that you think people believe about sex and marriage that just keeps perpetrating this harmful behaviour?
I think believing that once you've said I do, you lose the right to say no.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. And the pressure that you can feel. And I just want to come back to that fear a lot of it's fear-based because you're so concerned with the risk of infidelity and having your partner cheat on you, that you would put yourself in positions where it's not exactly consensual. It's more like tolerating something to avoid the fallout, to avoid what might happen, a big blow up, a big angry outburst. Maybe it's a physical violent act, maybe it's withholding money from you. There's, abuse takes many forms. Maybe it's going out drinking all night. Maybe it's having an affair. It could take many shapes and forms, but unfortunately, that's more common than it's not common. Yeah, it's a valid fear that a lot of women in Pacific cultures and in Fiji have, because as we all know, infidelity is rife. There's such a culture of cheating, and it really is quite a horrible feeling when you're sitting at home all night, not knowing where your partner is. And especially when you've got children together, you think you're building a life together, and they're using it they're weaponizing sex. So if you don't give it to me, I'm going to go and find it somewhere else. Where really sex should be about the mutual love, respect, connection. God wants us to come together and express our love, and we become one, and that should have a ripple effect in the whole marriage and family life. That we are one, we make decisions together, we build a life together, we share family life, as a couple and as a unit. But more often than not, in my experience, women are, it feels more like you're a solo parent often. I'm not saying all the time, but that weaponizing of time, sex, money, all of that stuff, the threatening is something that I really want to tackle with Lower Strong, and I really feel is too prevalent. So I think, women feeling that they can't say no because of all of that. Yeah, that's a myth, and that's just absolutely not the way that we should be acting out in marriage. And I speak to the men when I say, I really hope that us talking about this will give you food for thought, that you can think about, well, what am I actually doing in my marriage, in my relationship, what am I bringing? What am I bringing in, and what am I contributing, and how am I using these things? Is it a weapon? Like, is my money a weapon? Is my time? Or am I actually saying, hey, I want to be with you. I want to spend time with you. Let's make decisions together. Let's do this together, and let's set aside a time for a date night, or let's have an intimate night tonight, and sharing that with your partner. Yeah, it's complex, but
the men that are losing out too, the minute you've got to use sex to manipulate, control, hold over the head of somebody, you're really losing the beauty of what it's been created for. So, and yeah, both do. What do you think are some of the first steps that women can take to reclaim their dignity? They're listening to this podcast, they're realizing, oh man, they're talking about me and my situation. But where do you go? Where do you turn? You can't talk to your church. You can't really talk to your family. These are taboo topics. Maybe they can message you or I, but what are some first simple steps that they could take?
The first thing, I will just speak to you right now, whoever's out there listening. The first thing I want you to know is this is not your fault. You didn't cause it. You don't deserve it. And I think that a lot of us women we're overly critical of ourselves, and we do speak a lot of negativity into ourselves. And that's just a downward spiral, because of course then all that negative talk sends our self-esteem right down, and it plays out in marriage anyway. So first of all, just remind yourself that it's not your fault. And secondly, I know it can be really hard to speak to anyone, to even say it out loud. And as you've just said, I'm always welcoming private messages about this sort of thing from anyone that is a victim of any kind of partner violence. You are most welcome at any time to message me. I'm not a psychologist. I don't have resources other than being an ear and being able to direct you to the right place to get some help. But you can safely talk to me, and it wouldn't go any further. But there's also There are services out there for that. You would hope that your church leader is a safe person to talk to, but unfortunately, that's not always the case. But maybe there is someone in your community, a family member, a close friend, maybe your neighbor. There's someone you can speak to that will listen without judgment. So if you can, it's good to do that. And I say a neighbor, especially because I know when I was in a very, very high risk situation and there was a lot of coercive control and abuse, I had a neighbor who actually shone a light on the situation herself. She could see, that, and like I'm talking about self-esteem, she could see I was really down. She could see from a distance that there was control going on in the relationship. And sometimes you're so inside it, you couldn't even name what's happening to you. You couldn't even be aware that maybe I'm a little bit down, a bit depressed, maybe I am being abused. So for those of you that maybe are in this situation, but you haven't even allowed yourself to say it, sometimes a trusted neighbor is a really good resource, because that neighbor of mine said to me, hey, I want you to do something for me. Just pack an emergency bag, would you? And just leave it at my house. And I felt shocked and I felt ashamed. And then I went home and I thought about it some more, and I thought, well, there's no harm in doing that. It's not leaving. It's not saying I'm going today. And I sort of would discourage anyone from immediately leaving without having a safety plan, because once you leave, what happens next? But if you are really unsafe, find someone trusted that you can have communication with, possibly find an exit, find a way to get safe, and just make sure that that person has your best interests at heart. That's for people that are really not safe. But, just find someone to talk to. That's the first step. And also journaling, things like that, like writing it down, and a bit of positive talk to yourself, a bit of, some affirmations to reclaim your dignity and your self-worth. It's really good as well. Yeah, just building up your own self-worth so that you see that I'm worth it. I'm worth speaking up, talking to someone, and reclaiming my dignity.
Beautiful. And please, yes, we're both aware of some good organisations in Fiji that could help you around this issue as well. But look, yeah, you've talked about the faith community a little bit, and you and I both are believers of Jesus and love him, and love the faith community, and Fiji's full of it. So again, there's so much opportunity to bring change. What can the faith community in Fiji do around this issue to break the silence around marital rape? Because I don't think I've ever heard it mentioned in all of my religious activity I've been involved in. But what is, again, some simple steps?
Yeah, so that's the first thing, is it shouldn't be a taboo. It shouldn't have this taboo status, Our faith should be the safest place, and our faith community. So that's the first thing, is that we should be able to bring any concerns at all, and especially a safety issue, we should be able to bring that to our church leaders, to our church community. It's as I said, it's not always the case, but I would really challenge our churches and our families within the church and the faith community in Fiji to think again about, Christian love, and that love is protecting people from harm and keeping them safe and making sure they're okay, and not covering up abuse, because that is very common, covering up abuse, sweeping it under the rug, or saying, oh, men are men, can't do much, that sort of thing. Or there's another common one that I hear a lot is, that's their couple's business, leave it to them, don't get involved. But, what I've seen, and I'm sure what you've seen as well, is that our communities have so much power to change the narrative, to just even say out loud that violence is not acceptable, especially when we have leaders, village leaders, when we have got village leaders, church leaders, government, influencers, sports leaders, music and arts leaders, people who are iconic, people who are looked up to in the community. When they say it, it really has this powerful effect on the community. So again, encouraging not only our faith community, but anyone that has a platform at all, consider how you're using that platform. And that's really what birthed Lower Strong, is that I had to look within and say, am I just getting a bit of glory here from my platform, or am I able to use this platform for something so much bigger and better, and
Yeah.
something to glorify God as well?
Yeah.
Because I am a person of faith, and we all have ego. And even in the church leaders, you see that, like, it's hard to really shut down your ego. So that's the challenge, is that all of us with any kind of power, any kind of platform, to really be conscious, really be mindful of how we're using it, and making sure that what we're putting out there to the public is helpful, not harmful,
Yeah.
and that we are creating safe space for dialogue and for people to come to us when they need help.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely saying that violence is not acceptable, including in marriage, and that there is such a thing as rape in marriage, to support our women speak up.
Yeah, and I think just simply, I mean, sex is all through the Bible. Preaching about the beauty of it, what
Mm,
God actually intended, because I think so much, I always feel like we're on the negative and stop and don't and this and that, which we still
mm,
got to do. But what was God's intention? Why did he create it? What is the beauty around it, and giving our young people a vision that we've never had before, that is far greater than what the world and what, our selfishness wants to bring. So I'd love to challenge, particularly pastors, preach the
mm.
beauty of what God's created, and give us
Yeah,
vision.
yes,
And because when
absolutely.
you see that something's beautiful, then you run from the ugliness of it all.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think that speaks to, what's going on over in Fiji at the moment. I mean, it's a global phenomenon, but we see it highlighted in Fiji, this sort of pornography addiction, and um, young children being exposed to things like that, and then rape is happening in very concerning situations with older men and children, and all these kind of situations that should never ever be happening. But I think pornography has a huge part to play, and so if we're going to have a sermon about pornography, what's the counter of that? What's the opposite? Is the beautiful love that we can experience in marriage, in a safe environment where two consenting adults come together. So contrasting to some of the atrocities that we see in porn, glorifying pedophilia and all sorts of other things. Mm.
Absolutely. So look, our time is almost up, Sassy, but I know you're really passionate, particularly about empowering the men.
Mm.
And so am I. And, this is never an anti-men
No,
campaign. I'm just so thankful for good men in Fiji who are standing up,
100%.
speaking up, leading the kingdom way, serving, loving women. Um, but I guess what is your challenge to the men of Fiji in this? How can they be part of it? Because we'll never solve the issue unless we have the help of the men.
100%. And I think the true challenge is to redefine what we believe leadership and masculinity really is, because we have this masculine macho sort of culture, and we have it's really what you hear bashed around, that toxic masculinity, where being strong and being tough and controlling your woman, and you hear these kind of, sounds like the dark ages, but it gets a bit too normalized. And all of the jokes, around the tanoa or when we're drinking, there's a lot of below the belt jokes that objectify women. So first of all, dudes, guys, if you're out there having some grog, or having a drink, or playing sport, whatever you're doing with your friends or with family, with some guys, then the first thing is calling out controlling behavior or disrespectful language around women. If you're out with some mates and they start catcalling girls, say, hey, that's not on. Hey, sakosana, that's not okay. Just call it out. Just tell them, hey, it's not like that anymore. We've moved forward. It's 2025. Sakua, tambu. Just say it. And the worst thing that can happen is that they'll just spoil you back, and you say, no, I'm serious. Algina, just say, I'm serious. It's not, that's not done. That's not okay. Call it out. If you hear guys talking about their wives in a disrespectful way, saying that they're going to go home and using terms that just sound a bit controlling, call it out as well. That's something that I think we really have to change. But true leadership and masculinity is not actually that. That doesn't look like really like a cool macho guy to me. I like to see a man that protects and honors and values his wife, that does the same with his daughters and all the females in his life, that invests and puts time into his family and raising his children with his wife, not controlling his family members or his wife. I think we need to, change the script, because men are just as responsible. Well, really, they are so responsible for building safer homes. It's not all on the women.
No,
That's my passionate speech.
we've got
But
to do it together.
yeah,
I think I heard you say on another podcast that empowering women is not disempowering men. Was that you?
yeah, that's
And I
so
just
true.
love that.
Yeah, yeah, and this, as you said, Love Strong. For anyone that has ever thought it was a feminist movement, it's so not. It's so not. In fact, when you hear Lawa, you might think, oh, it's for the girls. Well, no, I have a lot of men that proudly walk around in these t-shirts because they're like, I want to be part of that. I am so with you on this. We need to change. It's time to break the stigma around mental health. It's time to say, hey, if you're not okay, if you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, pressured, and angry, and all of that when you get home, talk about it. Get some help. That's not a soft, unmasculine thing to do. And we want to empower our men to say, beat your issues, get some help, talk about it with your friends, go and do what you need to do, pray about it, and really try and break that cycle so that for your children, the next generation, we have men and women rising up, equally like this, and we can start to see some real change and real impact in Fiji and in Fijian communities. So yeah, we're empowering our men.
Absolutely. Really thankful. Well, thank you, Sassy. Greatly appreciate your voice, the
Naka.
journey that you've walked through. I know this is all very personal to you as well, the healing that you're on. You pay a price for speaking up about these issues, but we are wanting to name marital rape. Just because you're married doesn't mean that rape can't occur. Just because you're married doesn't mean you own her and can do whatever you want. That God's design for sex is beautiful, consensual, mutual love, that really endorses the covenants that he has created. So that's what we want to believe for the next generation, particularly of young people.
Yeah, and just one more thing I wanted to mention quickly is that women and girls are never asking for it, which I hear a lot. She's asking for it in that short skirt. So just something to take away at the end of this podcast is just, no one's to blame ever for rape.
Yeah.
No victim is ever to blame. No one's asking to be raped ever. Yeah. So that's just something that we really need to remember, is that you don't have ownership over another person's body and no one's asking for it. So we need to really change that language in our own.
Yep. Well, thank you, and God bless. Thank you to everyone for tuning in today. Feel free to message us, and we'll be back for another episode next week. God bless.